Yes, Joe Biden has been president for barely a week, but people are already placing their bets for the 2024 presidential elections. The big question, will Donald Trump be on the ballot? Stick around for all the details as compiled by The Focus. U.S. election betting has emerged as one of the biggest betting markets in the world, exceeding $2 billion handled in 2020. People are eager to cash in over the next 4 years as well. So far, Kamala Harris, who will serve as Vice President to Biden, is at the top of the presidential odds board. Harris was previously on the U.S. Senate and has also served as the Attorney General of California. At 56 years of age, she entered her political prime and ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020, before dropping out and later endorsing Joe Biden. During his 2020 campaign, Biden was widely viewed as a transition candidate by the mainstream media due to his political positions and age, and this led to significant media speculation about whether Biden would run in 2024. The last time that an elected one-term incumbent president did not run for re-election was in 1880, when Rutherford B. Hayes did not seek re-election, while the last time that an incumbent president did not run for re-election when he was eligible to do so was either in 1968 when Lyndon B. Johnson decided not to stand for his party's nomination following the New Hampshire primary, or in 1928 when Calvin Coolidge announced his intention not to stand for his party's nomination at a press conference in 1927 before the primary started. It's rare that an incoming president isn't a higher favorite to win a second term, but Biden is already 78 years old. He may be more than willing to step aside in 2024 rather than run at the age of 82, and some analysts believe that an agreement for Kamala Harris to take over is already in the works. A handful of ambitious GOP politicians are also positioning themselves and building the political operations that will allow them to travel and campaign with fellow Republicans. Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the failed 2016 GOP presidential candidate who bolstered Trump's effort to throw out states' 2020 votes, aimed for blue-collar workers with a message criticizing Biden's decision to re-enter the Paris Climate Accord. Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the United Nations, launched a political action committee called Stand for America and told supporters in an email that she is focused on the 2022 midterms. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also posted a countdown to Election Day 2024 on Twitter, writing 1,384 days. And of course, we also have former President Donald Trump. The MAGA campaign may have lost the most recent election, but Trump presidential odds for 2024 remain very strong. Donald Trump will be 78 when the next election cycle rolls around, and considering that Biden was able to pull off a victory at the same age, we cannot count him out. Also, the U.S. Constitution allows presidents to be elected to office twice, and the terms do not have to be consecutive. Grover Cleveland is the only American president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. He left the White House in 1889 after being defeated for re-election and returned in 1893. Since losing the election, Donald Trump ignored numerous traditions designed to ensure a peaceful transfer of power that showed the stability of American democracy. He refused to invite Biden to the White House, a courtesy traditionally extended by an incumbent to the victor, and he delayed the transition to Biden's team for weeks. He did follow at least one tradition. The White House said Trump left behind a note for Biden, but a Trump spokesman, Judd Deere, declined to say what Trump wrote or characterize the sentiment in the note, citing privacy for communication between presidents. In his farewell address, Donald Trump said the movement he started as U.S. president was only just beginning, acknowledging the imminent handover of power while avoiding any reference to President Joe Biden by name. Speaking without notes, Trump said his presidency was an incredible 4 years. He told the crowd that he and First Lady Melania Trump loved them and praised his family for its hard work, saying they could have chosen to have an easier life. Without mentioning Biden's name, Trump wished the new administration great luck and success, which he said would be made easier because he had laid a foundation. He acknowledged that his was not a regular administration and told his backers that he would be returning in some form. The biggest uphill battle for Trump might be winning over a fractured GOP party. But one thing the previous POTUS did was build a base that seems to show more loyalty towards him as an individual than the Republican Party as a whole. However, he still maintains a grip on the populist wing of the GOP. The Republican National Committee re-elected Trump allies Ronna Romney McDaniel and Tommy Hicks as chair and vice chair in what was widely viewed as a proxy fight over the outgoing president's role in the party. Despite the defections, the vast majority of House Republicans opposed impeachment, and nearly 2/3 did Trump's bidding and objected to state-certified electoral votes for Biden even after the violence in Washington. Trump also received 71.5 million votes in the election, a record total for a losing candidate, and one that clearly demonstrates a significant base of support among the American public. tens of millions of Americans are still likely to form a durable base of support, making Trump a political force for years to come, regardless of whether he seeks the presidency again. Trump already has a political action committee that allows him to raise money and exert influence in the party, whether he becomes a candidate or not. He gathered over $250 million within 6 weeks after Election Day, along with the National Party, and more than $60 million of that sum went to the new Political Action Committee. Those funds, which far exceeded what previous outgoing presidents had at their disposal, provide him with tremendous flexibility for his post-presidential ambitions. The $250 million he and the party raised over 6 weeks is enough to pay off any remaining campaign bills. The fund his legal challenges and still leave tens of millions of dollars. Aides had urged Trump to spend his final days in office trying to salvage his legacy by highlighting his administration's achievements. And his final pre-recorded remarks posted before he departed the U.S. Capitol for Florida, Trump touted his administration's accomplishments and the personal role he played. These accomplishments, which he hopes people will remember in 2024, include: Trump's tax cuts were the biggest gross tax cuts in American history, cutting over $5.5 trillion in taxes over 10 years. He cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, the largest percentage point reduction of the top marginal rate in history. The child tax credit was also increased by $573.4 billion over 10 years, larger than any previous change to credits specifically targeting families. Expanding GOP support among non-white voters. Trump earned 26% of the non-white vote in 2020, the second best showing for a Republican since 1976. After 4 years of branding Trump a bigot, his critics were shocked to see his support among blacks and Latinos grow in 2020. Averting a second Great Depression with the CARES Act. When the pandemic began, economists warned that the U.S. was barreling toward a second Great Depression. The CARES Act not only saved Americans from that harrowing fate, but also helped businesses come roaring back from the spring lockdowns, producing record-breaking 33.1% annualized GDP growth in the third quarter. Taking out Iran's terrorist force leader Qasem Soleimani. Trump drew a red line warning Tehran that if they killed even one American, he would respond militarily, and then enforced it. His Soleimani strike eliminated the mastermind of Iran's proxy wars across the Middle East and restored deterrence with Tehran. Trump also brokered not one, not two, not three, but 4 Arab-Israeli peace accords, the first agreements in more than a quarter century. He did it by rejecting the failed conventional wisdom of the foreign policy establishment. Embracing the pro-life movement. Donald Trump made history as the first U.S. president to speak in person at the March for Life. Pro-life conservatives have always been the black sheep of the Republican coalition, tolerated because their votes were needed. But Trump embraced the pro-life movement in a way no other president has and delivered an unprecedented string of pro-life victories. Before the Capitol riot, it looked like Trump would remain the Republican Party's standard bearer, either running for president himself again in 2024 or acting as kingmaker in the GOP field. But since the riots, things have been going a bit south. Trump referred briefly to the violence that engulfed the U.S. Capitol, but did not acknowledge the role he himself had played in the events leading up to the attack, including questioning the veracity of the November election results and encouraging protesters to march down to the home of the U.S. Congress. As a result, when the Trump presidency is discussed in the near, medium, and long term by anyone, all conversations will begin and end with the day of insurrection. The riot certainly exposed a rift in the GOP as Republican House Conference Chair Liz Cheney was one of 10 members who crossed party lines and joined Democrats in impeaching Trump for inciting insurrection. Several Republican senators, including leader Mitch McConnell, also suggested they were open to convicting Trump, which would effectively end his 2024 run before it begins. In addition, dozens of major U.S. corporations, business groups, and donors who typically back Republicans said they would suspend or stop campaign contributions to candidates who supported Trump's challenge to the election results. A January 15th Pew Research poll also found only 29% job approval for Trump, with 68% of the sample saying they don't want him to remain a major political figure in the years to come. Donald Trump was defeated by Joe Biden and was impeached by the House of Representatives, awaiting trial in the Senate. He will be eligible to run again in 2024's presidential election if he is acquitted in his second impeachment, or is not disqualified from holding public office in the subsequent Senate vote. For now, Trump remains angry and embarrassed, consumed with rage and grievance. He spent the week after the election sinking deeper and deeper into a world of conspiracy, and those who have spoken with him say he continues to believe he won in November. He has lashed out at Republicans for perceived disloyalty and has threatened both publicly and privately to spend the coming years backing primary challenges against those he feels betrayed him. Some expect him to turn completely on the Republican Party, perhaps by flirting with a run as a third-party candidate as an act of revenge. As he said, he will be back in some form, and we certainly don't doubt that. Other than the names already mentioned, the list of potential presidential aspirants for 2024 remains long. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has emerged as one of the brightest young stars of the Democratic Party. The politically savvy 31-year-old has built a massive online following and will be turning the requisite age of presidential eligibility just before the 2024 election. Andrew Yang, entrepreneur and former presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship and champion of change under the Obama administration, has also publicly expressed interest. Mark Cuban, the billionaire owner of the Dallas Mavericks, didn't exactly rule out a potential run for president in 2024, but said at this point he wasn't the right man for the job. Cuban has flirted with running for president in the last 2 election cycles. He said in May of 2016 he would absolutely consider being Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton's running mate, and at the time didn't rule out a run for 2020 or 2024. Ultimately, he supported Clinton in 2016 and President Biden in 2020. He told Brandon Scoop B. Robinson on his podcast that running in 2024 would depend on whether he thought he was the right person for the job. Of course, there will always be a celebrity long shot in the race, and in 2024, the odds are pointing towards Dwayne Johnson. Kanye West emerged as a massive underdog candidate this past election, but Dwayne Johnson isn't too far down in the presidential odds. The former WWE superstar and actor doesn't have a history of political aspirations, but received plenty of publicity for his endorsement of the Biden-Harris ticket in 2020. Do you think Donald Trump should run for the presidency again in 2024? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and remember to check back tomorrow for another video here on The Focus.